Something died this week, and to most people have absolutely no idea it happened. While the news cycle was busy chasing noise, a $6 trillion institution just made a move so calculated, so surgically precise, that when the dust settles, retail crypto as we know it may never look the same again. Morgan Stanley, one of the oldest, most powerful financial empires on Earth. They didn't just launch a Bitcoin ETF. They launched something closer to a financial weapon. A 0.14% fee structure that, on the surface, looks like a gift to investors. But underneath, it's the opening move in what I can only describe as a full-scale institutional-grade campaign to absorb the crypto market from the inside out. And here's what makes this genuinely unsettling. They're not hiding it. The announcement dropped in May of 2026. The filings are public. The fee is real. The E-Trade pilot is live. 16,000 financial advisors are now authorized, for the first time in Morgan Stanley's history, to proactively recommend Bitcoin to clients. Not wait to be asked, not reluctantly comply, proactively recommend. That's not a product launch, that's a strategy. Stay with me until the 16-minute mark, because what I'm about to walk you through is going to fundamentally change the way you think about who is actually in control of the crypto market right now. And if you're holding Bitcoin, if you're sitting on any position right now wondering whether the institutions are coming or whether they're already here, you need to watch this entire video before you make another move. Quick note before we go deep. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing here is financial advice. Always do your own research and speak with a qualified advisor before making any investment decisions. Let's start at the beginning. What actually happened? What is this move? And why does a 0.14% fee, a number that sounds almost boring, represent one of the most significant shifts in financial history? Comment MSBT below right now if you're currently holding Bitcoin. Keep watching and I'll tell you exactly what's in it. Let's talk about a number. 0.14%. That is the annual fee on the Morgan Stanley Bitcoin ETF, officially filed as MSBT, announced this May. And before you gloss over that number, let me put it in context, because context is everything here. BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, IBIT, charges 0.25%. That's the current benchmark. That's what the biggest asset manager on the planet decided was the competitive floor. Grayscale's Bitcoin Mini Trust charges 0.15%. They came in below BlackRock, took a hit on margins, and called it a win. Morgan Stanley just walked in and said 0.14. They didn't match the competition. They didn't just beat it. They drew a new line entirely. And that line is not an accident. Think about this from a pure business logic standpoint. Morgan Stanley manages roughly $6.2 trillion in client assets. They have some of the most sophisticated financial minds in the world running their product strategy. Every basis point of fee revenue is modeled, projected, stress-tested. These people do not leave money on the table by mistake. So when they price a Bitcoin ETF at 0.14%, below every meaningful competitor in the market, the obvious question is, why? And the surface level answer is simple. Volume, market share, brand positioning. You price the lowest, you capture the most inflows. You become the default Bitcoin ETF on every advisor's menu. Simple enough. But that's only one layer of the answer. Here's the layer that most people are completely missing. Morgan Stanley does not want your ETF fee. They want your portfolio. The ETF is a Trojan horse. Think about how this works from the client relationship side. An advisor at Morgan Stanley now has a government-backed, SEC-approved 0.14% Bitcoin product they can put in front of any client. That conversation opens a door. A client who was previously hesitant about crypto now has an on-ramp that feels legitimate, low-cost, and professionally managed. They come in for Bitcoin. They stay for everything else. Morgan Stanley makes its real money in wealth management fees, advisory fees, lending products, estate planning, private credit access, alternative investments. The ETF is not the business. The ETF is the handshake. It's what the consulting world calls a loss leader. You price one item below cost to acquire the customer, and then you monetize that relationship across your entire product ecosystem. This is not new as a strategy, but applying it to crypto, in this way, at this scale, with this level of institutional infrastructure behind it, is completely new. Now here's the part nobody is talking about. The fee is just the bait. There's a second, much darker reason why Morgan Stanley is undercutting the market this aggressively, and it involves a pilot program on E-Trade, a platform with 8.6 million active users that went live this week. Keep watching, because this is where the real story begins. Hit like if this is starting to make sense so far, and let me know in the comments, morning, afternoon, or night for you right now. I'm genuinely curious where in the world this channel is reaching. Let's talk about E-Trade. And let's talk about what it means that Morgan Stanley owns it. Most people know E-Trade as a retail brokerage. decent platform, 8.6 million users, competitive for self-directed investors. Morgan Stanley acquired it back in 2020 for $13 billion. At the time, the financial press called it a play for the mass market investor, a way to capture everyday retail traders. What nobody fully appreciated at the time is what that acquisition would look like in May of 2026, when crypto has crossed the threshold of institutional legitimacy, and Morgan Stanley is now cleared to push digital assets directly into that 8.6 million user base. The E-Trade crypto pilot changes everything about how we should understand this company's ambitions. Here's what the pilot looks like. Morgan Stanley is rolling out direct crypto trading through the E-Trade platform, not through a third party, not a workaround, not a crypto-adjacent product. Direct trading, crypto. And the fee structure they've set for this? 50 basis points, 0.5% per transaction. Now, 50 basis points sounds high compared to their ETF fee, but compare it to where the retail crypto market actually operates. Coinbase charges retail users spreads that can range from 1.5% to well over 2% on standard transactions. On smaller trades, through the basic interface, you're looking at fees that are dramatically higher than 50 basis points. Robinhood Crypto, Kraken, Gemini, all of these platforms make enormous margins on retail spread and transaction fees. That is their business model. That is the foundation their valuations are built on. Morgan Stanley is now walking into that space with a vertically integrated offering, a legitimized brand, existing user trust, regulatory backing, a 0.14% ETF feeding top-of-funnel interest, and a brokerage platform charging half of what the competition charges. This is what a vampire attack actually looks like in financial services. You don't destroy the competition with a single blow. You systematically drain their business model by offering everything they offer, cheaper, wrapped in institutional credibility. And here's the number that should make your jaw drop. Morgan Stanley has now officially moved to recommending a 2 to 4% crypto allocation for every eligible client, including retirement accounts. Do the math. 4% of $6.2 trillion in client assets. That is $248 billion in potential crypto allocation from one firm. One firm's move into this space has the potential to inject more capital than the entire market cap of most of the top 10 cryptocurrencies combined. Let that settle for a second. This is not retail buying pressure. This is not a retail cycle. This is a structural, coordinated, advisor-driven capital migration at a scale we have never seen pointed at this asset class before. And if 16,000 advisors start having the 2 to 4% conversation with their clients this quarter, which they are now authorized and incentivized to do, the demand that creates doesn't look like a speculative bubble. It looks like a permanent, recurring baseline of institutional bid underneath the market. Now, I want to ask you something directly. Type yes or no in the comments right now. Do you trust a Wall Street bank with your crypto keys? I genuinely want to see where the community stands on this. Because what comes next in this video, the part about wallets and real-world assets, might actually change your answer. But before we get there, let's acknowledge the question that's quietly nagging at everyone who understands what decentralization actually means. What happens when the institutions own the access layer? Now here's what happens next. And this is the part nobody is paying attention to. Morgan Stanley is not stopping at Bitcoin. The Bitcoin ETF and the E-Trade pilot are phase one. But the filings, the hiring patterns, and the internal infrastructure they are quietly building right now tell a completely different story about where phase two is headed. Stay with me, because this is where things get genuinely interesting and genuinely concerning at the same time. Bitcoin was the entry point, but if you think this is a Bitcoin story, you're still looking at the wrong thing. Morgan Stanley has filed for a Solana ETF. They filed for a staked Ether ETF. Let me be precise. They are not just filing to offer exposure to these assets. They are filing for staked products. Products that generate yield, that require actual on-chain participation, that demand a level of infrastructure engagement that goes far beyond simply holding spot exposure. You don't file for a staked Ethereum product if you're dipping your toe in. You file for a staked Ethereum product if you're building a full stack crypto operation that intends to participate in the network at an infrastructure level. And then there's the hiring. Morgan Stanley has been quietly but consistently posting roles for Rust engineers and Solidity developers. For anyone unfamiliar, Rust is the primary programming language behind the Solana ecosystem. Solidity is how you build smart contracts on Ethereum. These are not the programming skills you hire for if you're just offering an ETF. These are the skills you hire for when you are building something on chain. This is where things start to break down in terms of the narrative that Morgan Stanley is just getting into crypto. They're not getting into crypto. They're building a parallel infrastructure layer, a proprietary digital asset ecosystem designed to serve their client base from wallet to settlement, with Morgan Stanley controlling every touch point in between. And the end game, if the internal signals are any indication, is tokenization of real-world assets, RWAs. This is the phrase that keeps appearing in institutional filings, in BlackRock's strategy documents, in JP Morgan's Onyx blockchain reports, and now in Morgan Stanley's positioning. What does tokenizing real-world assets actually mean? It means taking illiquid, traditionally non-tradable assets, commercial real estate, private credit, corporate bonds, infrastructure investments, private equity stakes, and putting them on a blockchain, making them divisible, making them tradable in secondary markets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. On paper, this is democratization. A retail investor who could never access a commercial real estate deal can now buy a fractional token representing ownership in a logistics warehouse. That's genuinely powerful. But here's the risk that nobody wants to say out loud. If Morgan Stanley controls the wallet, their proprietary digital asset wallet, and they control the ETF that feeds into it, and they control the ledger that the tokenized assets sit on, and they control the advisory layer that recommends the allocation, then the question of whether decentralized finance actually exists for their clients becomes genuinely complicated. A self-custodied Bitcoin wallet with your private keys on a cold storage device that no one can access but you has a fundamentally different risk profile than a Bitcoin position held in a Morgan Stanley managed digital asset wallet on a Morgan Stanley ledger, recommended by a Morgan Stanley advisor, accessed through a Morgan Stanley brokerage. Both positions are in Bitcoin, but only one of them is decentralized. And I'm not saying this to be alarmist. I'm saying it because this is the conversation the crypto community needs to be having right now, clearly, directly, without letting the excitement of institutional adoption drown out the structural implications. The institutions are here. That is good for price discovery. It is good for liquidity. It is good for legitimacy. But the version of crypto that Wall Street is building is not the same thing as the version Satoshi Nakamoto had in mind. Here's the question I want you to sit with. What would you do if Morgan Stanley's version of Bitcoin becomes the dominant version? Are you positioned for that world? Or just watching it arrive? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this before it's too late. Because what I'm about to lay out in the final segment is the practical strategy, how you actually position yourself in this environment, and what the real risks look like between now and 2027. This is where smart money is already moving. Let's get practical. Because everything I've described, the fee compression, the E-Trade pilot, the full stack wallet play, the RWA ambitions, all of it only matters if you understand how to respond to it correctly. First, let's acknowledge the obvious. The fee wars are genuinely good news for investors right now. 0.14% is a real, tangible benefit. If you're going to have any Bitcoin exposure through a traditional brokerage account, an IRA, a 401k, a taxable account, then the competition between Morgan Stanley, BlackRock, and the growing list of ETF providers is driving your cost of access to historic lows. Use that. Don't ignore it because of philosophical concerns about institutional intent. The market is giving you a real structural advantage right now, and leaving it on the table is not a principled stance. It's just expensive. But here's the strategic layer underneath that. Understand what the institutional entrance actually does to the market cycle. When $248 billion in potential allocation enters the market through 16,000 advisors operating on a quarterly rebalancing cadence, you are no longer trading a retail-driven market. The volatility profile changes, the liquidity depth changes, the correlation to traditional risk assets changes. Institutional money does not buy the rumor and sell the news the way retail does. It moves slowly, on long mandates, with low tolerance for the kind of speculative volatility that made crypto famous. That structural shift is already beginning to show in the price action, and it will become more pronounced as the advisor-driven allocation builds over the coming quarters. What that means practically, the extreme volatility windows, the 70% drawdowns, the 300% parabolic runs in 6 months, those windows may become structurally rarer, not impossible, but rarer. The institutional bid creates a floor that didn't exist before, but it also caps the asymmetric upside that retail-only markets historically generated. So if your strategy was to buy the bottom of a speculative retail cycle and ride the mania, that strategy doesn't disappear, but the game has changed enough that you need to update your assumptions. Now, what about Coinbase? What about the retail exchanges? Here's the honest assessment. Coinbase has significant exposure to the institutional shift. Their retail spread model, where they charge 1.5 to 2% or more on consumer transactions, is structurally vulnerable to what Morgan Stanley and E-Trade are now offering at 50 basis points. Not tomorrow, but over 2 to 3 years. If Morgan Stanley's E-Trade integration reaches anything close to its potential, Coinbase's retail revenue base faces real compression. Coinbase's institutional business, Coinbase Prime, is a different story. Their custody infrastructure, their prime brokerage services, their Ethereum staking operations, these are competitive, growing, and not easily replicated by traditional wealth managers. Coinbase is not dying. But Coinbase is changing, and the market hasn't fully priced that transition yet. And here is the warning I want to leave you with, because this is the part of the story that gets buried under all the headline numbers. The fee wars are great today, but the endgame of institutional dominance is fee re-expansion. History shows this pattern across every financial product category that institutions have ever absorbed. In the early days of ETFs, fee competition was fierce. Then the market consolidated. The top 3 or 4 players captured the majority of assets. And while fees stayed low relative to mutual funds, the pricing power quietly returned to the dominant players. The same dynamic will play out in crypto ETFs. Today, you have 0.14%. In 5 years, after consolidation, the surviving institutions will have enough market share to stabilize fees, not raise them dramatically, but stop competing on price and start competing on ecosystem. And by then, if your entire crypto exposure is inside one institution's wallet, one institution's ETF, one institution's ledger, switching costs are real. Exit friction is real. The institutional squeeze is not coming from a single dramatic moment. It's a slow, structurally engineered reduction of optionality, and the time to think about it is before it arrives, not after. So here's the practical play. Use the fee compression while it lasts. Diversify your access points. Maintain genuine self-custody for any position you consider long-term strategic. Understand that institutional ETFs and self-custodied wallets are not the same product, even if they're both Bitcoin. And watch the RWA space closely, because the tokenization of real-world assets represents either the greatest wealth democratization in history or the greatest centralization of financial infrastructure ever attempted, depending entirely on who controls the rails. Probably both, simultaneously, in different proportions for different people. Are you positioned or just watching? Subscribe if you want to stay ahead of the $6 trillion wave before it hits your exchange. Let me bring this home. Morgan Stanley just did something that no amount of crypto Twitter speculation could have manufactured. They validated the entire thesis, the institutional adoption thesis that the Bitcoin community has been arguing about for over a decade, and they validated it in the most credible possible way. With a regulatory filing, a competitive fee, an advisor mandate, and an infrastructure build-out that is genuinely unprecedented in scope. The bottom is in for institutional trust. That is no longer a prediction. It's a structural fact, embedded in SEC filings and hiring patterns and 8.6 million E-Trade users who will see crypto on their dashboard this week. But here's the uncomfortable question you need to sit with as this video ends. While the institutions are buying, methodically, quietly, on a long mandate, what are you doing? Are you accumulating alongside them, understanding the new rules of the game? Are you leveraging their infrastructure while protecting your sovereignty? Or are you the exit liquidity? Are you the retail bag that gets absorbed into the institutional buy wall at a price they set, on a timeline they control, through a product they designed? Morgan Stanley didn't build this for your benefit. They built it for theirs. The fact that it might benefit you too doesn't change who drew the blueprints. The best move in this environment is to be early, be informed, and be intentional. Not reactive, not emotional, not chasing the narrative after the headline already ran. You found this video. That means you're already thinking about it differently than most people. That's the edge. Stay sharp. Hit subscribe if you want to stay ahead of what's coming, because this is just the beginning of the institutional story. And we're going to be tracking every move as it unfolds. Share this with one person today. Someone who is either completely skeptical of crypto and needs to see what the institutions are actually doing, or someone who is deep in crypto and hasn't thought carefully enough about what institutional adoption actually costs. And drop a comment below. Are you positioned for the institutional version of crypto, or are you holding out for the decentralized original? I want to know where this community actually stands. I'll see you in the next one.